This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. This question comes from Michael Castelli. Michael notices that there's an increasing reference, at least he finds that, to socialists as some sort of terrorists. He finds this in government documents and in more general conversations. He uses the phrase, which I guess he has encountered, domestic violent extremists, as the language used by some to depict socialists. And he asks the question, is this a new McCarthyism? The short answer to Michael's good question is yes, that's what it is. Or maybe to be more precise, that's what these kinds of phrases hope to be. In other words, at this point, having had a socialist run for president of the United States, both in 2016 and 2020, and having done extremely well, I'm talking, of course, about Bernie Sanders, and having seen him work for many years as a member of the United States Senate, we know very clearly, as most Americans do, that there's no violent extremism whatsoever in Bernie Sanders or anything he has done. We can now add others. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is another one. Cori Bush from Missouri. The newly elected mayor of Buffalo, New York. And I could go on because more and more socialists around the country have been elected to office as more and more Americans, millions of them, find themselves less and less enchanted by capitalism, looking for alternatives, and finding that one of the alternatives out there is socialism. But of course, once you look into it, you discover that there are many different kinds of socialism, and there always have been. The habit of referring to socialists or socialism as something uniform, that everybody who has that label agrees on something, that's usually a sign of a person hasn't done his or her homework. That's never been true. So yeah, there might be some people who call themselves socialists who do all kinds of things with which you and I might not agree. But there are also socialists who do and believe all kinds of things with which we do agree. If you want to have a conversation about the different kinds of socialism and why people disagree, who all call themselves socialists, about many, many things, including political strategy, reforms versus revolution, violence, why it happens, when it happens, what to do about it. Yeah, these are among the many issues about which socialists have disagreed, and sometimes to the point of forming different socialist organizations. But these details, which are important, are of no interest to people who lump the whole collection of socialists together into something that they can label with scary words, and their hope is the hope of McCarthyism, namely to tar the entire group with one bad brush in the hopes that nobody will take the time and trouble to look into this, but simply hate it. You know, we're coming out of 75 years of American ferocious demonization of socialism. That's where the people come from that Michael Castelli has encountered with their repetition of the original kinds of McCarthy smears of everybody. Don't take this seriously. It's not. It's an attempt to become, once again, the kind of closed down society that McCarthyism was. Remember Mr. McCarthy, the champion of calling everybody in those days, the late 40s and 50s, a communist. That was the popular way you dealt with it then. He ended up a sick, old alcoholic that nobody politically took seriously. It didn't work real well very long for Mr. McCarthy. Others took it up and used it to destroy many parts of the American left wing. And that's why these folks who call socialists violent extremists, that's why they do that. They hope to go backwards to those good old days for them. And I am here to tell you that the last 10 years of the United States are unequivocal proof that the direction of change is in the exact opposite way. More and more people are discovering the many kinds of socialism that they find worth looking into, worth considering, and worth approving as they vote for socialists and learn about that system. We should have been doing that for 75 years, the way in many other countries they have, but I want to be grateful that the long hibernation is over and looking at the socialist alternative to capitalism is something, once more, open-minded, intelligent, non-frightened people in the United States are doing. This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work.